and we are live for episode 22 of the Alt Natives After Hours podcast, brought to you by Axelrad Screen Printing in Wilkes-Barre and the TheVspot Bar in Scranton. And today I am joined by Clyde Rosencrance, owner, producer, and engineer at Republic Audio Studio in Clark Summits. And he's also been in a ton of different bands over the past, 15, 20 years, it seems. We'll get into that. But what's up, man?
Not much, man. Just living this quarantine lifestyle, making the most of it. Beautiful day today, beautiful weekend in general. So, trying to split the time between being productive and getting out there and just really soaking it in, literally, But,
yeah, that beard's looking fantastic, by the way.
Hey, I'm following in your footsteps, finally coming around to it, Thanks.
Yeah, I see a lot of people are growing beards in this, 7-week or 8-week thing we're in now.
Yeah.
It's fun to see.
It's one of those things, like, if there was a time to try it, I feel like now's the time to try it. And very literally, I know this might sound like an excuse, but like my razor broke early on in this. And then, I ended up getting a fix for it and everything. But, it was just one of those things that kind of fell in perfect timing. So.
No, do you keep it shaved because of your current your full-time day job, or just?
Yeah, just never, honestly, I just never tried. I mean, back in high school, I'm sure I dabbled. I think at one point I had like a little goatee type thing that was really super lame, but I'm sure
we all did.
Yeah. There was a time for that. But I'm sure that people I went to school with probably have, fond memories of that, nicknames and everything.
I used to have a chin strap. One of those.
Nice.
And yeah, it was awesome.
Never did that.
No.
Never did that.
No,
I'm glad.
You're probably better off.
Oh.
So how you doing? How's the family? How are things?
We're doing all right, man. It's one of those things, like it's a blessing and a curse all at once, because you get to spend all this time and be together. I mean, I've never spent this much time with my daughter before, which is awesome. I'm sure I'm driving my wife nuts, though. That's the other part of it. So, but it's great. I mean, it goes, all day long. You have opportunity to interact and everything in many different levels. So that's all good. We're staying safe, staying home, all that good stuff. Doing all the stuff we're supposed to do, getting food delivered, being, real cautious about all that kind of stuff. But other than that, man, I mean, we're doing all right. How you guys making out?
Yeah, same. And you mentioned earlier that it was a beautiful day, and this weekend was beautiful in general. So it was nice to get out with the kid and the wife just in the yard. Got the patio furniture out and kind of all ready for the summer. If there is one, and if there is one, it might just be at home. I don't know.
Yeah. Got to make the most of it either way, Yeah,
I told you earlier, my wife put me to work today. I built a new TV stand and
nice.
laid out a new rug, and so that made her happy.
It's like all those memes that are out there, like, like this is my quarantine like to-do list, and here's my wife's,
Yeah. But
very real.
Don't tell her I said this, but it does look a lot better. I'm the kind of guy, that it's a TV stand. It's the TV's on top of it. It works just fine.
When you're the kind of guy that can rock a fanny pack, practicality is just your thing.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know.
I do.
we were supposed to be in Disney last week.
Oh.
And outside of being in Disney, is that an Alt Native shirt?
Oh, why I'm so glad you asked. Is that in this camera there? Can you see that?
I wore yours.
Oh God, really? Wow. That's too funny.
That is funny.
This is actually one of my favorite shirts. I wear it all the time. Always sporting it, trying to sport it for, when I'm doing like these social media things and everything, and just putting it out there. I mean, it's actually a very comfortable shirt. So.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. Those things you've been doing, but
yeah.
But I was excited for two things for Disney: just being in Disney with my son and my wife, and also to strap that fanny pack on, man, and just roll around in it.
No more, practical place than Disney to do that. And even further, I saw one recently that I came across, and it was a combo fanny pack / cooler that could fit a full wine bottle, or I imagine a couple cans of beer. That's pretty practical.
It's very practical. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the. You've been doing a bunch of live series. I've caught a couple of them, and I've done my best to share them on the Alt Natives page.
Yeah, thanks.
Support, yeah. And Yeah, so you're showing kind of the behind the scenes look at some of the production you've done on the local band. So tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. So, it's funny. I was doing one today, and today I was breaking down a song by a band called The Mange that I produced a couple singles for and a little EP. And, it came to like the live Q&A portion of it. And, I was like, yeah, the reason I'm doing this, and I just stopped. I'm like, why am I doing that? I don't even know why I'm doing this, and then it kind of came full circle around to the fact that I'm pretty sure I started doing it when we went into this quarantine because I had sessions booked, so used to like every week seeing people and being with people in, the music business that I'm working with, day in and day out. And then all of a sudden that just stops. So I was like, all right, well, what do I have within my control to be able to help that continue? How can I continue to be in touch and, be in front of the people that I'm, working with, partnering with, and kind of catering to on a regular basis? So I thought, let me check out this live thing. And the first 2 weeks I did it, actually, I got a really good response, but me being a perfectionist from a technical standpoint, everything else, I was like just not really happy with how everything was going. So I was using my iPad, and literally, if it was close by, I'd grab it and show you. I had a music stand that I literally like. I used this stuff called gaff tape or gaffer's tape, and I taped my phone and my iPad to it, so they were side by side, and they would lay flat and not fall off. Because I have a stand somewhere, but God knows where that is. So I literally was taping them to that and doing the live stream from that. And I would listen back and I'd be like, the audio is not bad, but I'm an audio guy. I kind of have to represent the audio in a good quality way. So I kept going down the road of, how can I make this better? And, today it's, I think it looks pretty good. I've got 2 different camera angles. I'm doing screen sharing. I'm feeding the audio directly out of my recording system into the live stream feed. So, if you're wearing headphones or listening through good speakers, it should sound pretty decent, aside from the fact that it like gets squashed down into like a, lower quality audio feed, but still pretty decent. But it was one of those things. I wanted to kind of share what I was working on, but also give people a kind of behind the scenes look at some of the projects that maybe they've heard or maybe not, and just get an idea of kind of how I do things, and show them my process a little bit. And the reaction's been really good. I wanted to do, I guess, 2 things with that. Number one, share the music that I've been working on that I'm so heavily involved with for people to know and be able to, become familiar with that if they're not already. But also for people who are maybe working on their own music right now and they don't have access to a studio or like an engineer or the right equipment, things like that, or what they see as the right equipment, just kind of be there as an outlet for people to ask questions and just kind of chat and hang out, So and really just, at the end of the day, just a place for people to come hang.
Yeah, and I think it's cool too because I don't think people understand how involved it is. People just think that they send music to
Yeah.
these guys, they do it in an hour, and what are we paying for? Like, what do we,
Yeah.
So it's obvious it's much more intricate than that. So it's been cool to just kind of see the behind the scenes, look.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is very involved. I mean, it is absolutely one of those things, and I'm just scratching the surface on what goes into it, because the stuff that I'm showing, there's like that's literally the tip of the iceberg. There's the entire iceberg underwater that it takes to get there.
Mm-hmm.
The band has to put in a ton of work. We put in a ton of work before we even get into the studio. Ton of work while we're in the studio, long hours, things like that. So it's labor of love for sure.
Absolutely. And it's not your full-time gig, correct?
Yep. So I do have a full-time gig, and then, depending on the week or the month or time of year or even the year, some weeks I'm doing this pretty much full-time too, so.
Right. Now, if a band, would you take on new projects if bands sent you stuff that they did? How would that work?
Yeah. So it's interesting. The way I do things, up until about maybe 2 years ago, a decent part of the work that I was doing was remote work already. So for me to be in the situation where, we don't have the opportunity to be in front of each other, and I can't have bands in the studio, things like that. I'm pretty used to working that way to a large extent. So I'm comfortable with that. I have a network that, helps me be able to kind of bring in that kind of work still. And, even just this past week, I picked up 2 new mixing projects, a mastering project, and I'm kind of in talks about a new kind of full production project as well. So, it's actually been very busy. I thought that there'd be a little bit of slowdown, but there hasn't been. And, the good thing is, like, right leading into this sort of quarantine period, I had a couple projects that all kind of came together at once that really needed my undivided attention that didn't necessarily require the band to be here. So it kind of worked out perfect. I had just wrapping up tracking for the Holtzman effect, which, we've been working on an EP for a while, kind of took a little bit of a break. The bass player, Sean, injured his thumb or his one of his fingers, actually, so he couldn't play for a while. So we had to wait a little while to get some stuff done for that. But that kind of came to a head. Soul Satellite decided that they wanted to put out an EP, and we had a few singles tracked. We just needed to tie up some loose ends. So that kind of came to, the same spot at once. Tim Ziegler, who, contacted me. I mixed a record for him a couple of years ago. He contacted me and kind of wanted to do, he's like, I'm not really sure if I want to do a single and have you fully produce it, or maybe just, I want to do a little tour this summer. So maybe just a couple acoustic things and, in support of that I can get out there ahead of time. Maybe we'll go down that road. And of course, he comes in the studio and we end up doing like a full EP, so that worked out great. And that was like, that was literally like the last tracking project I had before this. And then Black Nile, they came in to record a single, and, the guys were on it. They came in and they had a couple other songs that they had rehearsed, and they wanted to do an EP. They were coming in to do the single just to kind of test the waters a little bit and see how the setup worked and everything else here. And it just worked so well that I was like, hey guys, it's like 1:30 and you guys are already set up. Why don't you try a couple more tracks? You're telling me you're well rehearsed. Let's just see what happens. So they did. And so we ended up with an EP with those guys, so it's just been like really, for me, really fortunate, the timing of everything. And then while I'm wrapping up, I just wrapped up the Soul Satellite stuff. Tim Ziegler, Black Nile's been done. They have to put that out, and a couple little things. So while all that's wrapping up, I've picked up a couple other projects, small things here and there. So it's been really interesting. I don't know how long this will continue like that, but it's been, I'm really fortunate, really thankful,
Yeah, it sounds like you're super busy.
Yeah.
Which is good. I'm still waiting for a couple tracks for myself, but we won't go there.
Gotta make time.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you have paid material to work on.
Yeah, wow, I know.
Yeah, Clyde was kind enough. He was helping us record some of the songs from the Alt Natives Underground series we were doing at Carl Hall. He would take the songs and mix and master them, and we've been, compiling those, and I would play them on air on my show on Saturday nights, which is really cool. I think the artists really appreciate that. So thank you again for doing that.
Absolutely.
And being part of that with us. Hopefully we'll get back to doing that again soon, but yeah. I don't know if
I've been thinking about that. And actually during my live stream today, I asked the question of everybody that was on. I said, thinking about the current state we're in, one of the things I've been thinking about and people have been asking about is like, if clubs opened up tomorrow and your favorite band is playing, are you going to go? Do you feel comfortable going, and I gave my honest response was, I don't know that I am comfortable right away with everything going on. It's crazy, like you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. So, thinking about that a lot, and then thinking about the Thursday, All Natives Underground thing, at some point it's got to come back. And I feel like even if it's like a live stream thing or something like that we can, record and, put out some good audio for, something like that, like it's got to come back in some way. Cause that's an awesome outlet for people, and people love hearing it and talking about it.
Yeah. I hope they do. And I hope that when this is all said and done, once we're like, totally free, people, and I'm scared because I've said this 1,000 times. I feel like, are people going to, go out in droves because they've been stuck in their houses for 2-3 months, or are they going to be just continuously to be hesitant because of the situation we're in?
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, you've seen it. I mean, it's not easy to get people to come out to shows, even if they're free, and if they're, what I felt was the right time for those shows. It was, early, kind of on Thursday. So, is it going to be even more difficult? I don't know. I really don't know.
And that's the thing I've been struggling with is I remember I haven't been playing actively in a while. Like I'll do gigs here and there just a couple times a year, but I haven't been playing regularly in quite some time. But I just remember all the gigs where we had like really bad weather that I thought it was going to be a really poor turnout. Some of those always worked out to be like our best gigs where it was packed. For whatever reason, people were like, "Oh, a foot of snow, great. I drive a Nissan, I'm good," or whatever. Like people would just come out, or like, "Oh, it's it's pouring rain, I don't care. I like the rain," or whatever.
Yeah. We'll quote
Crazy.
Jaconda Cortazzo, drive fast, take chances.
That's it. That's it. I remember that. Oh God.
Yeah, let's talk about your earlier days. Leading up to where you are now.
Yeah.
My audience might only know you from your time with the Collective and OurAfter, because sadly, that's all I know you from,
Yeah.
really. And it wasn't until we started working together on this alt native series that I got to know you a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we're doing this. But talk a little bit about your history as far as playing in bands and that life and how that kind of led into what you're doing now.
Sure. Um, so I've played in a ton of different bands. Back all the way back in high school, I was in, what I thought were pretty serious bands at the time, at least for high school kids, with some serious players anyway. But the first real band I was ever a part of that was, after high school years and all that kind of stuff was a band called the Magdalens. And so we were sort of, we got dubbed as, I think, do you remember Joe Student, that name?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was
So I
just
think it
talking
was,
to Mike Lello about him yesterday.
really,
Yeah.
I think it was Joe Student that dubbed us as Skeleton Rock.
Okay.
So it was really interesting. I didn't write any of the lyrics or anything like that, and at the time didn't even pay attention to the lyrics, so who knows? But a lot of it was about like the macabre and like really weird stuff. Like we had a song called Cornfields and Graveyard. So it was like it's really weird stuff. The first album was called Even the Apple. So it was like poking at religious sort of visual, if you will. And the second album was called Word Spoken Get Up Man. And we were what I would call like raw alternative rock, college rock kind of stuff. And our second album, so I did like all the business end of things for that band. And our second album, that Word Spoken Get Up Man album, we actually, I at the time we were getting a lot of traction. We were doing some like regional tours, New York, Philly, New Jersey, like those types of gigs. And we were getting some traction, talking to a couple labels, things like that. So I ended up hooking up with somebody at Island Records, and then also somebody from McGathy Promotions at the time out of New York. And that second record we released, we did a national college radio campaign on the CMJ reporting stations, which I guess CMJ doesn't exist anymore, but the College Music Journal reporting station. So we did a national campaign. We charted on college radio. We got our stuff like released internationally. Like for years, I was getting requests like from like record stores in Europe actually for our CD, and I was like, please take them. Yes, just pay the shipping. Get them out of here. So that was really cool. We ended up kind of breaking up. I ended up leaving the band, and we had talks with like Island Records. We did a demo for Island Records, and had some really cool stuff going on. But it just got to the point where there's a lot of work. You get frustrated. There wasn't a ton happening, and sometimes you just want to move on. So I moved on from that, did a couple things, and then I think the next more serious thing that I got involved with was OurAfter, which at the time, I can't remember if I was living with Guido, John Phillips at that time, or not. But him, myself, and Justin Norton had a place in Troop where we lived together, and we ended up in that band together with Mike Dudley and Eli Ludzik, and that was a lot of fun. We did a tour, we put a record out. I was working at the studio at the time as an assistant engineer, and the one night I was out at I think it was Corkscrews up in Dunmore, if you remember that place.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I was up at good old Corkscrews, and Guido pulls me aside outside, and he's like, I want to talk to you about something, the way he does,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, how do you feel about being the fifth member of the band? And I'm like, what is this, the Backstreet Boys? What are you talking about? So but I was flattered, and I think what it came down to is he just liked the ideas that I had, and working as an engineer and giving some creative ideas at that time was something they really appreciated. So we did a tour. I ended up parting ways. They wanted to go a much different direction than I was interested in. I was interested in more like obscure rock kind of stuff, and they were interested in more in mainstream stuff when it came down to it. During that same time, I also was playing with the Collective, so I joined kind of at the tail end of that and was playing with them. And for those of you who remember the Collective, it was one of the biggest cover bands in the East Coast at the time. And we'd play all the clubs up from like Vermont down through Key West, and played R&B and hip hop, that kind of stuff, which was, when I joined the band, I didn't know I think I learned about 50 songs on the way down to Ocean City on a Thursday in the back of the van. Kermit drove, and me and Joe Olenek sat in the back of the van. He's like, well, here's the chords for this one. Here's the chords for this one. There's no guitar, so don't really worry about it. And I'm like, that sounds great. And that's it. That was it. Like, I was in the band that from that point on. And, it was really interesting. That was a ton of fun, that band. Like, you felt like a rock star in that band, everything was taken care of for you. It was really cool. Jimmy Mancoose is another individual that I would mention. So he's a singer-songwriter that, again, when I was working at a different studio, he came in and he was doing some sessions, just basic acoustic guitar and vocals. And he showed up for his final session the one day for his first record. And he had a lead guitarist that was supposed to come in, and the guy didn't show. And we waited for like 2 hours, and he was heartbroken at the time. Like, he was almost in tears. And I was like, man, like, we're here. You've already got time in this. Like, if you don't mind, I'll just go out and play some stuff, and, I'll play a bunch of stuff, and you keep what you like, like, I'm not offended at all. So I did. I literally just improvised over all his songs, and he kept a lot of it, and released it like that. And then probably about 6 months or so later, we were hanging out a little bit here and there and getting to know each other. He called me up and he's like, would you produce a record for me? Like a full band record, like, I want to play with a band. And I'm like, that would be great. And that was one of my early, full band productions where I was really taking the reins as a producer, not just an engineer, and kind of, taking charge, running the show a little bit. So I hired some musicians for that, and put a record together around all the songs that he wrote, which were really great songs. He wrote great songs, really creative lyrics, really good storyteller, and great singer and player. So we had Eli Ludzik play drums on that. Lenny Mecca played bass. Let's see what else. We had my cousin Matt Nakoa played some piano on that. He's like a Berkeley grad genius musician guy. And I played all the lead guitars on it and everything except for the rhythm acoustic guitar. And that was a lot of fun. We did a bunch of gigs. We played with some of the guys from like Dispatch, cool. And bands like that of the time. So that was a lot of fun. More recently, the last couple of years, I've had a couple opportunities to go back to my roots a little bit, playing in some like blues bands. So I played with a duo called the Soul Shakers, which is Bill Coleman and Sharon O'Connell. I played with them a bunch of gigs, and we did a bunch of gigs over one summer. And we had someone that was with the band who was the singer as well. His name is Bob McCartney, who became a really good friend of mine. Who he had a bunch of original stuff, and I was on the same page as him. He's like a super open, creative guy, and he's like, why don't we make a record? And so we started demoing stuff out, and played some of the stuff for Bill and Bill and Sharon was kind of into it, but Bill was like not really all that into it. So Bob and I were like, all right, well, that's okay, let's make our own record. So we started a little group called the Dalton 45s, and we put a record out a couple years ago, and we brought in a rhythm section, Giulio Caprari, who plays with Phyllis Hopkins' band, and Nolan Ayers, who plays with Phyllis Hopkins, and then Eric Brody played keyboards on it. So we did that, did a bunch of shows, didn't really promote it much or anything. It was just more for fun, did that. And then the last show that we did, actually, we had a friend of ours by the name of Peter Florence. We had him come out and play with us at the show at the Scranton Cultural Center. And it was great. Really big show. We played on the big stage, like out to the ballroom and everything. It was really cool. And I was really glad that I had pulled Peter aside at one point to come play with us, because a lot of the material that we put together, of course, me being a guitarist and the engineer and producer, like, I loaded it up with guitar and everything. So it's like really guitar heavy music. So we needed a second guitarist. So I asked him to come because he was just such a cool dude. He unfortunately passed away last year. And so I was really glad to have that opportunity to have him up there and, share the stage with him and everything. So that was cool. Aside from that, I mean, I'm not gigging a ton, but I play on a lot of the records that I produce, whether it's, whether it's visible or whether it's not. I'm behind the scenes there somewhere on most of the stuff I work on, just adding, a little fairy dust here and there,
Right.
So I'll keep myself busy.
Yeah, because you did that with These Idle Hands, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, that's a cool project. I was wondering if you would help where needed as far as filling in for guitar and stuff like that. But
yeah,
that's neat. I guess that's part of your job, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, like, that's one of the differences between, I guess, just being an engineer and being a producer. And, being a producer, there's a lot of things that I get involved with that a lot of engineers I know just won't touch because, and I remember one engineer I used to work with, I remember asking him about it, like, why don't you offer suggestions, because if you have good ideas, why not put it out there? And I just remember him saying at one point, he's like, we don't want to be responsible for someone coming back 6 months down the road and saying, well, this was your idea. You're responsible for this. And, you charged me for it and everything else. I take a different approach, and knock on wood, I've never had an issue with it. And honestly, I think people come to me because of that. Because they want someone hands-on. They want someone that's going to help them. I sit with the band up front before we even get into the studio and talk about any parts or anything and say, what do you want? Like, what do you want to get out of this? And, try to get them to fully commit. Are you willing to do whatever it takes to get that? It's going to be a lot of work. And, sometimes I give people homework too. Like before we even get in the studio, I might give a singer some homework before we come in, or, so whatever it takes to kind of get the best out of people, and sometimes that's like, all right, well, here's the part everybody wants to do. Who can play it best, and who cares what your role is, let's just get it done. And that's what happens.
Okay. That's really cool. That's really neat. I would assume that would be an asset, in my mind. That would be, you're someone I would want to come to and say, hey, like you've done this for a long time, and you also are talented in this. So like, I would appreciate your input. So that's neat.
Yeah, and that's the thing, man. Like there's no more. I tell people in bands this all the time. I tell people in general this. This is my feeling, but there's no more valuable thing, and I know you'll appreciate this. There's no more valuable thing in this life than your time, and I tell bands that when I'm working with them up front, it's like, you have to invest in what it is that you're working on here. We're going to invest a lot of time in this. So, at the end of the day, like I don't work on everything that comes across my plate. I don't have time to work on everything that comes across my plate. I fortunately, have an opportunity to kind of pick and choose some of the things that I work on. And then here and there, I'll do some other things just to kind of, whether it's helping other people or just kind of stay visible in the community, whatever that might be. But at the end of the day, there's only so much time,
Yeah. Yep.
And the big thing is like the way that I work. I think I invest quite a bit. And, with all the stuff that I take on, all the hats that I wear with the bands that I work with, it is a great time commitment. So, I don't think everybody who has a studio can afford to do things the way that I do. And that's, I'm fortunate enough to be able to do that,
Yeah. I want to talk to you. I feel like, when you were a gigging musician, life was good almost.
Yeah.
And then you've been able to phase into this next stage of your life. And I think, I want to say it's easier for bands to get, music done, but maybe it is. So when you were out gigging and playing, like, I feel like the scene was very healthy. People were constantly out. You said that earlier before, the club shows were awesome. They were great. But there weren't a lot of bands, getting records produced and things like that, because I mean, outside of, taking the time, it costs a lot of money and all those things. But now I feel like a lot of bands do. Because back then it was like, oh, if you had a CD, like you were like, you were something.
Yeah.
And now I feel like a lot of bands can have, records made. Now, are they good quality? That's a different story. Sure. But I mean, we're doing this here with this technology.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's going to sound.
I'll let you know later.
But I mean, is that accurate? Like, is it a lot easier for bands to do that now with the technology that we have?
The word I would use is it's a lot more accessible.
Okay.
And that is absolutely true. And to be honest, I'm a big proponent of that in many ways. There is a time and a place for it. Depending on what you want. Sometimes you can do it on your own. Sometimes you can't. It really depends on kind of what you're after, what you want. And I think that's one of the differences between me and, some other people that I've worked with in the past that do similar things is there are people out there that are sort of resistant to that change. And the reality is it's here. Recording technology is accessible. it's on your phone. You can make a record on your phone if you really wanted to. And it's, I'm not gonna say it's great, but it's there and you can put it out, you can upload it anywhere, you know? Um, so you can either embrace it or not. And what I find is that by embracing that and actually getting involved, I really love getting involved in helping educate people and understanding, you know, maybe how to approach different things as far as recording and get the most out of them. Because at the end of the day, just, you know, like I said 5 minutes ago, I can't work on every single project. It's just not possible. But if I can help other people and, you know, help their project sound a little bit better, especially some of the local people, and then maybe they're looking for someone, like they recorded it all themselves because they could take all the time in the world to get the performances right. And that is really important. But maybe they need someone to mix it. And that's where I come in. Or maybe they need someone to master it to make sure that when they release it, you know, that, and when it goes to the streaming services and the streaming services are ultimately going to level check all your music, they don't know what, you know, how to appropriately prepare for distributing on different means, whether it be a physical copy of a CD or cassette tape is different versus vinyl versus streaming. They need someone that knows that stuff, you know,
Hmm.
so if they want to take it really seriously. So that's where I see myself helping out is in those situations. You know, the handful of bands that I can produce in a year, you know, I'll work with them from all the way from, you know, before the beginning all the way through the end and beyond. But maybe there's some other people I can help out along the way too. I got into, you know, you talk about the transition of, you know, performing music to, you know, recording music and then more, you know, full-time, less performance and more recording now. The way I got into recording music was back in, I don't know, back in high school, I guess it was. And I was writing music for a band before the Magdalens, who I mentioned before. I was writing music, but I would never remember it. I had like a terrible, terrible memory. So, you know, I'd get to band practice to be like, yo guys, I got this great thing. Check it out. And I'd be like, well, that wasn't it. Give me a minute here. Hold on a second, you know, and it would just suck, you know?
Yeah.
So I bought a little like 4-track Tascam cassette recorder, and that's what I learned on. And with that, I could do like, could record a guitar part and a vocal part, and I can overdub another guitar part and like, you know, have a couple things going on at once. And if you get really crafty, you can do, you know, even more layers and things. Um, and then from there, you know, it just kind of took off. I love the fact that I could do that. And, you know, I was fortunate enough to get an internship at a studio and work there for a handful of years in a commercial environment where it was just, you know, I was more of a staff engineer. So whatever project came in, I was working on it that day, you know, and I learned a lot there. But from there, having an opportunity to work with other engineers, you know, whether it's from, you know, New York or out in LA, you know, going out there and working with people or, you know, virtually, like in the, you know, sense that we are right now, just having opportunities to bounce ideas off people and kind of trade, you know, stories a little bit, things like that. It's just really kind of taken off and really, you know, taken hold, I guess.
Yeah, and how would you describe the scene from a like a studio perspective? Because going
Yeah.
back to what I said before, I think 20 years ago there was a select few that were top notch.
Yeah.
Now, because of technology and the accessibility that you mentioned before, there are more studios available.
Yeah.
Um, are you one to say, "Hey, dude, like I can't take this project on, but you know what? So and so over here, I can't recommend them enough. They'll
Yeah.
take care of you."
Yeah. There's a lot of great studios in the area. You know, when you think about, like, for me, a couple of studios I would think of, JL would definitely be one. You know, those guys do a great job, and I think they have a sound. I mean, they do a certain thing, the certain style of music that they do really good at, and you know, people go back there, and you know, when they put out a new project, it's like it kind of has that thing to it, you know. So they do a really good job there. You know, SI Studios, that's where I spent a lot of time. I worked there for a number of years. They do a really good job there. They're great engineers, nice guys, you know. And then there are a number of studios like sort of on the outskirts that do really well. I know out in Stroudsburg, Dan Malsh has a place out there. I don't really know him very well. I've talked to him a couple times. But he's like to me, he's like, you know, a modern hard rock guy. He does a really good job, you know, and he's got a really, you know, nice looking facility there, a ton of amazing looking gear, you know, that kind of stuff. But then there's a lot of smaller studios too that are popping up that have, you know, sort of little niches and, you know, little things that they can do that, depending on what you're looking for, you know, there's a lot of opportunity. the biggest thing in this, I think, is finding people that you're going to work with that you know and trust, and that you can really, have a good vibe with, and just be able to create. There's nothing worse than getting into a situation like that as someone who's a creative person and being uncomfortable. That's the worst thing in the world, to sort of stop the creative process. So if you could be comfortable and it sounds decent, is sonically, and then, you get a really good performance, it's going to be a good record,
Yeah. What kind of advice would you give, a young artist thinking about, recording something? What could you, offer them?
Yeah. Um, wow. Really broad question.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Probably so many things. And I've actually, so since I've been doing these live stream things, I've been getting a ton of people sending me messages, asking me questions, which is great because I love to help out. Um, what I would say is, and I guess sort of the same advice, whether it's a young artist just trying to record for the first time, or someone who's been around a long time who wants to record their ideas and they just don't know where to start. Start with what's most comfortable to you, and start with something that's not going to get in the way of the creative process. People ask me all the time, what's the best software to record with? And the answer that I give is the one that's easiest for you, the one that you pick up the easiest and the quickest, and I can rattle off a handful of them to people when they ask, depending on what their background is. But at the end of the day, it's what's easiest. I use a program called Pro Tools because I've used it for so long, and it is sort of the industry standard. So if I go from one studio to the next, or if I'm getting files from someone else, it can reciprocate really easily. And in today's world, doing a lot of stuff virtually, that just makes my life easier. And I know the program really well. Does that mean it's the best? Maybe for some things, but for other people, the best thing is what doesn't get in your way. So that's probably the first thing. Like, do whatever's easiest, as far as that goes. And that, I gave somebody, I don't know, 6 months ago, I gave them advice of, all right, you're struggling with the software, you're struggling with the interface and all the computer programs and all this other stuff. I said, they make these really good all-in-one units where you can record your stuff. And today, the technology, it sounds pretty good. So it's an all-in-one unit that looks much like an analog mixer, which is what this person is used to. You have faders on it. You have, things that you can physically touch with your hands. I said, why don't you try one of those? That can record decent quality stuff, and it won't get in your way as much, So I think that's a big part of it. But also I think, find a mentor, find someone that has been doing it a little bit longer than you, that maybe, can share a couple best practices, quick tips with you to be able to kind of help you, just not spend as much time on the technical stuff. Because if you're getting in it to create, then that's what you should spend your time doing, is creating. You shouldn't be spending your time fumbling over all the junk. And that's like, I struggle with that personally with, not so much today, but like when it comes to creating my own music, for a long time, I would struggle with that because there are just so many options, and the software is endless. The stuff that you can have, the stuff you have access to is just absolutely endless. And that is what gets in your way, is having too many options. So I've done projects where I've intentionally limited my options just so we can move quickly and have the creative stuff happen versus the technical stuff, So that's probably the biggest piece of advice.
Those are two really great answers. And, because people thinking about it might be overwhelmed with all the technology that's out there. So, and that might just occur, that might be the roadblock for them initially.
Yeah.
And second, what you said, finding someone that knows what they're doing, because I mean, I'm guilty too. Like, there's things that I want to do, and I always think, oh, well, I can go ask so and so, but then I'm like, oh, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to, like, they're busy. I don't want to bother them, and they don't have time for me, type of thing. But
Yeah.
if you want to do something and you have access to people and people out there, you do. I mean, Clyde's an example. Reach out and don't be afraid.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Don't
those
be
are great
afraid.
answers.
In general, human beings want to help other human beings. So if you look at someone and you're like, wow, that thing that they did was really cool, just reach out, see what happens. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to, read your message and not respond. And then it'd be like 50 other messages that you sent last week or whatever. So who cares?
Yeah.
Just give it a shot. Put yourself out there.
Yeah, for sure. Those are great answers. They were really
Thanks, man.
Broad question, great answers.
Thanks. I try.
So where can people find you?
Where can people find me?
Yeah. Social
So
medias, obviously you have the
yeah,
studio in Clark Summit.
yeah. So the studio is in Clark Summit, to your point. As far as online presence, they can go to republicaudiostudio.com. So that's one place you can go, just to kind of find out some basic information about, maybe some work that I've done, the studio itself, equipment. People are always interested in that. But if you want to see what I'm up to, check out the Republic Audio Studio Facebook page. That's where I've been doing all the live streams. And then also on Instagram, I do a lot on Instagram as well. So, I might share some more lengthy, involved things on Facebook, and on Instagram, I might just be uploading quick things of like, hey, here's a couple things I did this week, or, here's this morning I got up and mastered a project, and here's just a little snippet from that, or something in my story. So definitely present on social media. Get out there, check out what I'm up to. Hit me up if you have any questions, or if you like what I'm doing, or if you don't like what I'm doing, let me know, because maybe I need to change it.
Constructive criticism.
Yeah, everybody needs that.
We do, for sure. I was going to say to you. Oh, do you think? Obviously, there's a lot of bands, and you yourself are doing this as well. A lot of the live streams. Do you think once this is all over, you'll continue doing those?
So that's a great question, and that's something I've been thinking about. So I started the song breakdowns, or like what's been sort of come to be known as the Republic Audio Deep Dive. So I've been doing these deep dives every week of individual songs, and I've got enough material to go for a long, long, long time. But honestly, it does take me a lot of time to do, and it's not as bad. Like this week wasn't as bad because I feel like I have the technical stuff worked out. And again, like to my advice 5 minutes ago, all the technical stuff was getting in the way for me for weeks. And that was like, I was like 2 weeks ago, I was like so stressed out getting, trying to get all the technical stuff to work, because I'm putting this all out there for people to see. And I know like other engineers are going to see it, producers, and they're gonna be like, wow, Clyde's mic doesn't sound too good, So I'm like, trying to get all this stuff to work out, but I don't know anything about video and broadcast and stuff. And that's where I struggled. But I ended up switching up the platform, and it's much better now. But so I think I might do the breakdowns, but I think what I might do is, now that I sort of have the technical stuff worked out from a video standpoint, I put out a video this past week on Friday, showing how I was taking a track that the guys in the Holtzman Effect sent to me that they recorded on their own, and I put it into the project that we're working on. And then I reamped it. So I actually took that signal and sent it out through an amp, and, blasted it out in the room. And it was kind of a specialty type of amp that I used, that I demoed, and then brought it back into the project. And now I'm going to use that for the final mix. So I show the breakdown of how I did that and how that's possible. And I got a ton of views on it, a ton of comments and shares and everything else. So I think people are hungry for that kind of stuff. At least for that one video, worked out really well. So I'd like to do more content, but I'd like to understand, what people are interested in. And I would like to cater to the local market, as opposed to just putting it out, into cyberspace and just hoping someone cares about it,
Sure.
So I'd love to continue to do something. I just don't know how often or what exactly it would be. I'd love to do like little 5-minute videos.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important for your part of your business, and I think that's important for any business. It doesn't have to be just sound and audio, or I just think being active on social media and having a web presence in general is very important in this day and age. Yeah. I mean, I'm in sales, so I mean, I talk to people about this every day, and some people get it, some people don't, and I have a feeling that once this happened, people that I talked to about having the presence. And kind of blew me off.
Yep.
Wish now that they did, because that's where everyone lives right now, is the internet and online and social media. It's just it's funny how we've kind of been driven to.
That's a great point.
Doing this, so
it's a great point. I mean, and I'm seeing it in a lot of different things. Getting out in front of people on social media is one thing, but through this process, so much has changed. And I think life going forward is going to be so different in so many ways. Like it's not my quote, but I always really fully believe and reiterate that necessity is the mother of invention. Mm-hmm. And in a time like this, it's necessary for us to do things differently. And those of us who have the ability to adapt and move forward with that and sort of creatively change and grab a hold of whatever that, that struggle is and really sort of own it and come out on the other side are the ones that are going to be doing interesting things on the other side, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious to see what the world is going to look like post COVID-19 for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm worried it's going to take a while. I'm worried we're going to have to wear the masks for a while.
Yeah,
Um,
that's yeah.
I'm worried that once bars and restaurants will open, once they do, I'm worried they're going to be limited to the capacity that they can operate in.
That's gonna be tough for the service industry.
Yeah, it's
really tough.
It's scary.
It's a new world, man.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Then we got these murder hornets or whatever.
Dude,
what the hell is that about?
Dude, I saw it yesterday and I shared it. I think I got like 19 shares on what I posted. How much more can we take?
It's crazy. Like the next is going to be locusts, and then we're all just gone.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's what it is, and that's kind of scary.
Yeah. No, that's not the case, but it is interesting.
Now, my wife is convinced there's one of these hornets outside of our house today. Now, I don't know if it's because we're reading about it or what it is, and I've got friends who were messaging me saying, and they're in Philly saying. And it's this hornet, and it's large, and it was just racing around the front of the house, never landing on anything, and chasing other bees.
Yeah.
And it was a large thing, and she was convinced she could see the stinger, and it was moving too fast for me to see it because it was just a menace. It was just patrolling the area, and I don't know if it was one of those or not, but
I hope not. What I will say is, at my last house, I remember. It was a little more rural, so there was all kinds of weird stuff growing out there and animals and bugs and things. But there was some weird, I think it was called a cicada killer. I looked it up, and it was like this giant wasp. And I found like a nest. It was just one sole wasp living in the nest, and I found it or whatever. Like I encountered it, I'll say. And that was freaky. The thing was huge. It was like as big as my thumb, Yeah. So that's kind of what I think of when I see these crazy murder hornets or whatever that are out.
What a name too.
That's great. Is that the scientific name? I don't know.
I don't know either. But I was reading. I mean, the one stung the guy through his bee suit.
Oh my God!
Felt like hot metal pieces like going into his skin. And I was thinking, I've only been stung by a bee like 2 or 3 times in my life, but I remember when it happened, like that hurt.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe it's not as bad as they're saying it is. But
so I didn't read anything, so don't tell me anymore because I don't even want to know. So I'm just going to get all the
Just stay inside.
Yeah, that's it.
That's what the government wants. That's
right.
That's been a joke. That's been a joke too. Oh, you don't want to stay home and avoid COVID-19? We're going to make you stay home by releasing.
Yeah, exactly. Release the bees.
Oh man. God. Well, dude, thank you so much for taking the time to talk tonight.
Thanks for asking me, man.
Yeah, it's been a little while since I've seen you. The last live show we did was March. No, that was canceled. Maybe it must have been February.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's been a while since I've been seen. So
yes, but you know what? I'm glad we had lunch that one day because you turned on to is it? No, it's not Aquino. What is that place called?
Oh, Akita Sushi, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes. I go there often now. Yeah, I go.
Awesome.
There. Well, I used to, not anymore.
Yeah. Wow.
But I was going there quite a bit. So
yeah, the place is good, man.
Yeah, it was good. Your hair's looking great too, buddy. Like how you doing that? You cutting it home? Is your wife cutting it?
I trim up. So that's a whole other story that like I don't even want to get into. For some reason, and I was thinking about this morning when I was trying to maintain or whatever. But I was like, I see all these memes out there about like wives cutting hair and stuff like that, and they just look awful. But for some reason, my wife has always wanted to cut my hair, like for years. Like, forget about being in quarantine. She's always just like, I could give that a shot if you'd like,
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've got a good barber, loyalty does me all right,
Yeah, same here.
But so I don't know. I mean, I love her and I trust her, but there's something about it. I think she just wants to really change me. I don't know.
Yeah.
She doesn't like the beard either, and I'm kind of liking it. So
get rid of her.
I know. What's that all about? I don't know. My daughter likes it. She thinks it's funny.
Yeah. That's all that matters.
That's it. Love of my life.
Well, thanks again, man. I hope I see you sooner than later.
Likewise.
But stay safe in the meantime, and hopefully we'll have a drink together in the very near future.
Sounds good, man.
right, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Anyone looking for guidance and all that kind of stuff, hit up Clyde at Republic Audio Studio.
Don't hesitate.
He'll take care of you. All right, man. Thanks.
Be good.
See ya.